Welcome to the deep dive. So, credit cards, they feel like this great safety net, right? Super convenient, there for emergencies, but I mean, for so many people, they turn into something else. Something really dangerous. This high-interest trap that costs way more than any other kind of borrowing.
Exactly. And look, we know you're here for real steps, not just, warnings. So today, our mission is basically to cut through all that noise. We want to give you the strategies the financial guides actually use, the methods proven to, well, get that debt down, slash the interest you pay, and, this is key, speed up your credit score recovery.
Yeah, and we're going to pull out some specific numbers that really show the, frankly, shocking costs of just managing debt the standard way. And then we'll give you the toolkit, everything from like behavioral tricks to the more advanced stuff like restructuring debt. We got Fight Back. Let's just jump right into the financial side of this debt. Yeah. Because honestly, this is often the most expensive money you will ever borrow.
It really is. I mean, just look at the interest rates, the APRs. They absolutely dwarf mortgage rates, student loan rates. But beyond just the rate on your statement, there's this really important benchmark that financial advisors use. It's a way to gauge your risk. Basically, your consumer debt, that's everything except your mortgage, should ideally stay below 10% of your net take-home pay.
Okay, wait. Why 10%? That sounds specific. What's the big deal if you go over that?
Well, 10% seems to be this kind of critical point. Both psychologically and structurally. It signals that your fixed monthly payments are starting to take too big a bite out of the money you need for, essentials. Food, utilities, maybe saving for an emergency. Once you cross that 10% line, you're becoming financially fragile. Any unexpected bill can suddenly push you behind. It's a real early warning sign that your spending might not be sustainable.
And here's something that makes credit card debt even more painful compared to those other loans we mentioned. The interest you pay. It's not tax deductible.
That's a huge difference, and it really works against you. I mean, mortgage interest, often a big tax break, student loan interest, usually deductible. But that 15, 20, maybe 25% interest on your credit card balance, that's just gone. Pure cost, no help from the government there.
So, okay, it's expensive. We get that. But the other big hammer this debt swings is against your financial reputation, your credit score. This is where we need to talk about the credit utilization ratio, right? The CUR. How exactly does owing a lot hurt the score?
The CUR, it's absolutely critical and it makes up about a third of your whole score calculation. It's pretty simple, really. It's just the amount you owe right now as a percentage of your total available credit limit across all your cards combined.
And there's a threshold, isn't there? A point where it starts to hurt.
Yeah, the magic number seems to be 30%. Keep it below that. All the financial modeling shows that once your ratio gets higher than 30%, like say you owe $5,000 and your total limit is $15,000, that's 33%. It starts dragging your score down. You're basically signaling to lenders, hey, I'm relying pretty heavily on my credit cards, which, makes you look like a bigger risk.
And a bad score isn't just about getting another loan, is it? A high CUR can actually mean you pay more for insurance.
Right.
And it could even make it harder to rent an apartment or maybe even get certain jobs if they run a credit check. The effects ripple out way beyond just that monthly bill.
They absolutely do. So the goal here is really twofold. One, cut the cost of borrowing by getting that interest down. And two, lower your risk profile by getting that utilization ratio down below 30%, like right away.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into probably the single biggest danger for anyone with card debt, getting stuck in the minimum payment trap. And this is where seeing the actual numbers is so important because honestly, the math is just, it's shocking.
Yeah, this calculation, everyone should have this taped to their fridge. Seriously. Let's use a really common example. Say you owe $5,000. Your card has a pretty standard 15% interest rate, and the minimum payment required is, say, $100 a month. That sounds okay, right? Manageable.
Yeah, $100 a month feels like you're chipping away at it, you're doing something. But what's the real story? What's the timeline, the true cost if you only pay that minimum? Assuming you don't charge anything else, of course.
Okay, stick to only that minimum payment. It will take you 79 months. That's more than 6.5 years to pay off just $5,000. And the cost, the interest, you'll end up paying nearly $2,900 in interest alone.
6.5 years. And almost $3,000 in interest, just to borrow $5,000. So you basically paid almost 60% of what you borrowed again, just in interest charges.
Right.
Wow. That makes the minimum payment. It's not a solution at all. It's like a slow financial bleed out.
That's exactly what it is. That's compound interest working against you. Hard. You pay interest on the principal, then next month you're paying interest on what's left of the principal plus the interest they just added. It just snowballs the wrong way.
Yeah.
So the advice here, it's really non-negotiable. The absolute fastest way to kill that debt, shave years off the payoff time, and pull down that utilization ratio is simple. Pay way more than the minimum every single month, as much as you possibly can.
Okay, so once we've got that baseline, always pay more than the minimum we need, a plan for those of you juggling multiple cards. You've got to know how to prioritize, right, which debt gets the extra money. And this is where we get into that payoff philosophy debate. The debt avalanche versus the debt snowball.
Right, and these two strategies are really different at their core because they prioritize different things. One prioritizes the math, the other prioritizes, well, your motivation.
Okay, let's tackle the math one first. The debt avalanche. You say that's the financially purest approach.
Absolutely. With the Avalanche method, you basically ignore how much you owe on each card. Forget the balance size. You focus completely on the interest rate, the APR. You take all your extra payment money and throw it at the card with the highest APR. Meanwhile, you're just making the minimum payments on all your other cards.
And the benefit there is pretty clear-cut, isn't it?
Totally. By attacking the most expensive debt first, the one charging you the most interest, you guarantee that you pay the least amount of total interest over the entire payoff period. Mathematically speaking, it's the most efficient way, saves you the most money in the long run.
Right. But then there's the debt snowball. And this one flips the whole thing around. It tells you to ignore the interest rate and instead focus on the card with the smallest balance first.
Now, I gotta ask, is that really good advice? Are we telling people to potentially pay more interest overall just for a feel-good moment? Well, that's the trade-off, isn't it? And it's why, behavioral finance is so important here for some people, especially if they feel totally overwhelmed by having lots of different debts. The snowball gives them a psychological edge, a win. When you knock out that smallest debt completely, even if it wasn't the highest interest, you get this immediate sense of accomplishment, momentum. Then you take the money you were paying on that clear debt and you roll it onto the next smallest balance.
Ah, okay. So the idea is that maybe you lose a bit on financial efficiency, but you gain it back because you're more likely to actually stick with the plan.
Precisely. Think about it. If you're someone who finds it hard to stay disciplined with money over the long haul, those quick wins from the snowball can really help. They make it feel less daunting. They stop you from burning out. I mean, if the Avalanche method would save you, say, $500 over 5 years, but you give up after 2 years because you never felt like you were making progress, well, then you haven't really won, have you? The best strategy is always, always the one you can actually follow through on until all the debt is gone.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so choose your weapon. Avalanche for math, snowball for motivation. Now let's talk about some more advanced tactics, starting with something absolutely crucial if you're trying to pay down debt. You have to stop the bleeding, right?
Yeah.
You absolutely must avoid adding new debt while you're paying off the old stuff.
Non-negotiable. And one really practical tip the financial guides emphasize here is maybe put the cards away for a bit. For everyday spending, try switching to cash. Not even debit cards, actual cash.
And there's a reason for using cash, isn't there? Something about how it feels different.
Yeah, there's a ton of research on this. It shows people tend to spend significantly less when they have to physically hand over bills and coins. It just feels more real. It provides an immediate sort of reality check on your spending. Swiping a card feels kind of abstract, almost painless in the moment. But when you see that $20 bill actually leave your wallet, that loss registers differently, more immediately. This is also the perfect time to do a really honest, maybe even ruthless look at your cash flow. Find those expenses you don't really need right now, maybe some entertainment subscriptions, maybe cutting back on eating out or those luxury coffees. Anything you can temporarily cut frees up more cash to throw at the principal of that debt.
Okay, so we've stopped adding new debt, maybe switch to cash. Now what about making the existing debt cheaper? We should look at restructuring it to lower that interest rate. The two big options usually mentioned are balance transfers and debt consolidation. Let's start with balance transfers. Those 0% intro APR offers look really tempting.
They can be incredibly powerful tools, absolutely. But, and this is a big but, they aren't usually free. When you move that high interest balance from one card to a new one offering 0%, you almost always get charged an upfront fee. Typically, it's around 3% of 5% of the total amount you're transferring. Sometimes it's a flat fee.
Right, the fee. So how do you figure out quickly if that fee is actually worth it?
You got to do some quick mental math. Let's say the fee is 4%. But getting that 0% rate means you avoid paying, say, 20% interest on that balance for the next 6 or 12 months. Well, then paying that 4% upfront fee is almost certainly going to save you money overall. The massive warning here, though, is you have to be disciplined. You must pay off that entire transferred balance before the 0% introductory period ends. Because if you don't, boom, you'll get hit with a card standard, usually very high, APR on whatever balance is left. And that can wipe out all the savings.
Okay, critical warning there. Pay it off in time. Got it. What about the other option, debt consolidation?
Right, debt consolidation is a bit different. Here, you're typically taking out a new separate loan, usually a personal loan or maybe a home equity line of credit if you have that option. The idea is this new loan has a much lower interest rate, maybe somewhere in the 4% to 8% range. You use the money from this new loan to pay off all your high-interest credit cards, the ones charging you 15%, 20% or more, so it simplifies things. You now have just one payment, likely lower than the sum of all your old minimums, and you're saving a ton on interest.
That sounds great on paper. One lower payment, less interest. What's the catch? Or the behavioral pitfall people fall into?
The biggest danger, and we see this happen a lot, is that people consolidate their debt, which frees up the available credit on their old cards. And then almost immediately, they start charging things on those cards again. They run the balances right back up. So if you consolidate, you have to make a mental shift. The money you're saving on interest, that's not extra spending money now. You need to apply that savings towards paying down the consolidation loan faster or put it into savings. And you absolutely have to commit to keeping those old credit lines clear, or even close them.
Okay, that's a crucial discipline point. Don't dig a new hole after filling the old one. All right, let's shift gears to the really tough situations, dealing with dire financial straits. If someone is genuinely struggling, like can't even make the minimum payments anymore, what is the very first thing they should do?
First step. Communicate. Don't hide. Don't ignore the calls or letters. Call your creditors directly. Explain your situation honestly. You might be surprised. Lenders are often willing to work with you if they know you're trying. They might offer a temporary forbearance, a pause on payments, or maybe even lower your interest rate for a while. If that doesn't work or isn't enough, that's when people start looking into debt settlement.
Right, debt settlement. That's where you try to negotiate with the creditor, either yourself or using a settlement company to pay back only a portion of what you owe, and they agree to forgive the rest.
Right.
Why on earth would a credit card company agree to just forgive debt?
Well, from their perspective, getting some money back is better than getting no money back. If they think you're really in deep trouble, maybe heading towards bankruptcy, they might decide it's better to cut their losses and accept, say, 50 cents on the dollar now, rather than chase you for years and potentially get nothing. But this is usually only an option for people in, as the sources put it, truly dire straits. And the immediate trade-off, as most people know, is that settling a debt for less than the full amount will seriously damage your credit score. It's a big red flag on your report.
Okay, so the credit score hit is the obvious downside. But you mentioned there's another crucial detail people often miss about debt settlement, something technical.
Yes, and this is huge. It's the tax implication. If a creditor forgives $600 or more of your debt through a settlement, they are generally required by law to report that forgiven amount to the IRS as income to you, using a Form 1099-C, so that amount they forgave. It's treated as taxable income for you in the year it was forgiven. You might feel this huge relief from getting rid of the debt, only to get hit with a surprise tax bill the following April. It can just swap one financial headache for another.
Wow, that is a really important detail. Forgiven debt equals taxable income. Everyone needs to know that. And then for the most extreme cases where the debt is just completely overwhelming and unmanageable, the final option the sources talk about is bankruptcy.
Yeah, bankruptcy is sort of the nuclear option. It's a legal process designed to discharge most types of overwhelming debt, but it also comes with the most severe and long-lasting consequences for your credit report and financial standing. It really should only be considered after every single other possible option has been explored and failed.
Okay, so this deep dive has really laid out the battlefield and the strategies for fighting back against high-interest credit card debt. We've hit on, what, 4 core pillars? 1, always pay more than the minimum. That's how you break the cycle of compounding interest working against you. 2, pick your payoff strategy, Avalanche, for pure financial efficiency, or Snowball for that psychological motivation boost. The key is sticking to it. 3, stop the bleeding immediately. Avoid new debt like the plague. Maybe try using cash to make spending feel more real. And 4, Use those restructuring tools smartly. Balance transfers, consolidation loans, they can dramatically lower your interest rate if you use them right and avoid the pitfalls.
Exactly. Getting free from this kind of debt takes discipline. Absolutely. It takes consistency. But the reward is huge. You're not just saving money on interest, often a lot of money. You're also rebuilding your credit worthiness, which opens up doors later on. You're getting rid of probably the most expensive money you'll ever borrow.
And as we wrap up thinking about that debt settlement piece, it leaves us with a pretty challenging question for you, the listener. Let's say you are in truly dire straits. You're facing this choice. Settle the debt, take the immediate relief, but also accept the credit score damage and that potential tax bill. Or you keep struggling, paying high interest maybe for years and years, potentially never getting ahead. If the score damage and the tax hit are maybe short to medium-term problems, but the freedom from that crushing high-interest debt could be permanent. How do you weigh that? How much is that long-term freedom from debt worth compared to the temporary hit to your credit and maybe your taxes? Definitely something to think about as you figure out your own path forward.
Indeed it is. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.